This is Long Way to the Top, and I'm your host, Shane Bryan. In the words of the immortal AC/DC, it is harder than it looks. These interviews will give you a glimpse into the lives of the artists that we've sung along with, danced and rocked out to. Some go deep into their past and others celebrate their recent releases. But all of them show that regardless of who you are, it's always a long way to the top. Thanks for joining me on Long Way to the Top. He is considered Oz rock royalty. He was the frontman for one of our most successful bands of the 80s, Australian Crawl, and then James Reyne embarked on his own solo career. James is everything we've come to expect in our classic rock artists. His music has become a staple on any 80s playlist, and during the 80s, more than 1 million Aussie Crawl albums were sold. I spoke to him just before the anniversary of Sons of Beaches last year, and he was heading out on tour. At the time of release of this show, a brand new sellout tour with Ella Hooper is underway. He is just as popular as he always has been. I asked him about the time in other bands like the Party Boys and A Company of Strangers, plus I question him about his often misheard lyrics. I hope you enjoy Long Way to the Top with James Reyne. Welcome, James Reyne. How are you?
Good, thanks, Shane.
Yeah, gearing up for a brand new tour. 40 years ago, Sons of Beaches came out.
Right.
I can't believe it's 40 years.
Neither can I, to be honest. And again, I think it doesn't seem that long ago that Scott Crawford, who manages me, said to me, you realise next year it's going to be 40 years since the Boys Light Up album came out. We were going to do a tour.
Yeah.
The Boys Light Up turns 40 tour. And then COVID happened, and that seems quite a long time ago now. So now we're at Sons of Beaches is 40. Wow.
Yeah, because you had a spate of albums in a very short period of time.
Yeah.
It was like every year there was a new album coming out. I mean, as a new band, was that a lot of pressure for you guys?
I don't know. I think it's called. It used to be called the Sophomore Jinx. And that was about they say that about your second album, because you had your whole life to write your first album, and then you had 6 months to write your second. But we always had a lot of songs or bits and pieces hanging around, and I think maybe the third record, that one, the Sons of Beaches, I think it's not as, I don't think it's as good as the first two, to be honest. To be really honest with you, I don't think it's nearly as good. But there aren't as many good songs on it. But I think. I don't know, it's all right. I mean, it's not played on court. I don't know. I don't listen to these things, so I don't know what it sounds like now. But I think we're always learning. I don't think we thought in those terms, just going, good to make an album. What do you got? What do you got? I mean, we'd all come in with a few songs and different records.
Yeah.
I mean, possibly I'd have a few more than most, but I don't know.
Yeah. Well, look, you've been prolific. I mean, in terms of Australian artists, your career has been absolutely prolific with your solo career as well as your Aussie Crawl. Before you started Aussie Crawl, you were in a couple of early bands, and now I'm gonna hopefully I'll pronounce these right: Spiff Rouch and Clutch Cargo. Spiff Rouch, is it? And Clutch Cargo. It sounds like a couple of macho guys off an action movie.
Well, Clutch Cargo was a cartoon back then. We only named Clutch Cargo for one gig because it was the first gig Australian Crawl ever did, and we had to play this local pub near where we lived. And I think it was a friend's birthday or something, and they just said, come play our party. And we had to name that. I don't know, because they were going to put posters up, so maybe it wasn't a party. Anyway, but we didn't have a name, and we just thought, I don't know, Clutch Cargo, because Clutch Cargo was probably on television when someone was making the phone call, So, and I don't know, Clutch Cargo. So it was only for one gig, and then we called ourselves Australian Crawl, and then just kept using that name. But we're only in one band, really. Well, I was in it, and Simon was in Spiff Rouch, and Bill and Guy McDonough in Spiff Rouch as well.
And of course, there was also a very famous band that everyone, I think, in Australia has been in, and I'm staring at the vinyl of it right now. It's called The Party Boys, live at several 21st.
Yeah. Yep. Yes. What would you like to know about that? Well, that was.
Sorry, was that?
What do you want me to say something about that, or you want to?
Yeah, why not? Let's talk about that.
My version of that story is that Paul Christie who played bass in Mondo Rock, that Mondo Rock back then. I still he does now on that tour, and he'd played with Kevin Borich and Paul. I'd met Paul just around. I don't know. You end up meeting a lot of these people just around at gigs and stuff. And Paul rang me, and I was at this point with Australian Crawl. I don't know if I was a bit frustrated or something. I just wanted to do something else. And Paul lives up on the northern beaches of Sydney, north of Sydney, up at Whale Beach, Palm Beach, up there. And he rang me one day. He said, "Oh, why don't you come up? Just come up and stay. And we'll put a little band together. And we'll just do a few gigs around here, like round up in that area. We'll do the Bill Golub Surf Club and things like that." And I went up there thinking, it's a week and it'll be fun. We did one rehearsal. And for all these, cover songs. And Paul said, "We'll just call it the Party Boys." And I went, okay. And it was going to be no publicity, no anything. And there was a pub up there called the Manly Vale, and we did a few of these gigs, and then we did the Manly Vale. I remember walking out the Manly Vale, and it was packed. And I remember walking out, there's a recording truck out the back. And I go, "What's this, Paul?" It's, "Oh, we're just recording for posterity." I went, okay. And then this album came out, and then I was like, okay, put it out, And it did really well. And so that was, but that was 5 gigs, I think. I think we did 5 gigs. So I was in that band for a week.
I think it's one of those bands, though, that, it's like it had this revolving door.
Yeah.
And it's good to have as an Australian sort of, legendary band that sort of never really existed.
That's right. And I think Paul, and they had some incredible people in that band, incredible people when I was in it. And I was the junior guy. I was the youngster. And because everybody else was, really, really experienced and had, done some really fantastic things. So I was the kind of new kid, But, then Paul just, ran with it and had some incredible people in those bands,
Now, you were running late for this interview because you were chatting with the one and only Gavin Wood from Countdown.
Yeah.
And he may have even asked you this question, but what were you thinking going on Countdown, the debut, very first time you're on Countdown, and you've got double plaster casts on your arms?
Yeah, well, it wasn't. Well, what was it? I mean, it was one of those things where it was genuine. I mean, at the time in the band, we all thought everyone's going to think this is a gimmick.
Yeah.
But it wasn't. I'd been hit by a car in Swanston Street in the city. I was walking and the car hit me. And it was sort of my fault. I was daydreaming. I stepped out in front of a car. And I went over the sort of bonnet, the roof of it, and amazingly broke. There's a tiny bone called, I forget the name of it, in your wrist. And I broke exactly the same bone in each wrist. And I'd never heard, let alone seen anyone with both arms in plaster. And you can't do anything. I mean, I worked out how to go to the toilet. That's it. You can't bathe. You can't do any. You can't dress yourself. You can't undress yourself. You can't eat. You can't do anything.
Wow. I remember seeing that that episode as a kid. Just going, "Oh my God, you're like, who is this band?" I loved it.
Well, thanks. Yeah. Well, and there was also, we were working a lot, and it was really, working a lot of these sort of sweaty pub kind of places, and you'd be drenched when you came off stage, and you'd have to change. You have to change. And of course, the band had to undress me, and of course they'd undress me and then leave. And that became old really fast. And I'd be sitting in the band room in my underpants, and they'd just leave.
So you're one of the, I guess, I think personally that you're one of the hardest working bands in Oz music, and that really showed up where you sold 1 million records, 1 million albums in the 80s.
Yeah, well, that's what they tell me. But I think what it was that I think there were a lot of bands working as hard as we were. I mean, that was the day of, that was the era of the Angels and Cold Chisel and the Split Ends, and you name all those bands, and everybody was working probably 6 nights a week, most months of the year, because there was no alternative for the entertainment dollar, so to speak. There was nothing. There were 4 channels of television, and no phones, no nothing like that. So if you could go to any town, and every town had a pub, and most pubs would want to have bands on, because everybody, if there's a band on, everybody would come and drink an enormous amount of booze. So the pubs would all make a lot of money, and it was just a really healthy. And radio was really supportive of local stuff, so you put a single out, usually get added to the radio, And
Yes.
so it was just an ongoing thing. So it worked for everybody, you know. And there was
Yes.
from McGavin, there was Countdown, and there was Donny Sutherland's show on Channel 7 on Saturday mornings. There was Hey Hey, it's Saturday. When we started off when Hey Hey was on in the mornings, but they'd have three bands on, you know, every episode of Hey Hey. So it was just a very healthy sort of environment because it, you know, it just was.
And that's really missing now, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I know why, because it's just there are so many alternatives there's so many rules now. I mean, I was even saying to Gavin, I mean, the thing about when you played live, now odd time you'll play a gig, I haven't done it for a little while, but there are certain gigs I've done in the not too distant past where I thought, and they have these crowd capacities, and it's really enforced. So we go, okay, 1,500 people is a crowd capacity. And they will allow 1,500 people in, not even 1,501. It'll be, whereas back when we were doing that in the sort of 80s, I remember playing some of those places. There'd be 3,000 people in there because there weren't the same kind of rules, and there'd be people hanging off the roof, and there'd be fights, and you know, it'd be wild, and everyone smoked. Yeah, it was fantastic.
And you know, your solo career after Oz Crawl continued on. It was almost, to me, it was almost a blur of, you know, Oz Crawl, James Reyne. It's all one and the same, you know. And it was very much, you know, similar sort of vibe to it. Yeah,
you're right. I just put it all under the same sort of umbrella. You know, I just keep going.
Yeah.
What I can do, I just keep going. I like doing this. I know what I'm sort of starting to. And that was the other thing. You're saying we were prolific. I mean, it was only after the Australian Crawl that I really started to go, oh, this songwriting thing, or maybe I could be a songwriter. I could actually take this, you know, seriously in the sense of put your head down and write songs because you like doing it. It seems to work on most occasions. You know, and I just enjoyed it. It was something, and it was something I did, and I just got more and more into doing that than I had been in Australia, because we just did it. Just go, oh, yeah, got a song.
You also looked for other opportunities too, like you know, you did James Blundell, a duet with James Blundell, Way Out West, and then my personal favourite, Company of Strangers. What a great concept.
Well, thanks. Well, I can't take credit for it because it was sort of, there was a guy called Jeff Scott he was American, who played on my first solo record, and I got to know Jeff, and Jeff came out here to be in my band. And Simon Hussey, who I'd known all my life essentially, and he and I wrote songs, some of which were on the first record, a lot of which were on my first solo record, second solo record. And Simon grew up just down the road from me, and so he and I had been writing songs, and then he produced Darryl Braithwaite's first record, which did really well, and he used my band because he played with my band. He got to know my band, you know, because he played with us. And so he used that band in the studio when he was producing Darryl's first record. And then he just got to know all those guys. And then Jeff, they became sort of mates through that. And then they started doing some stuff together. So Jeff kind of moved himself out here for a little while. And he and Simon started making a record. And then they called me and said, do you want to come in and do some writing with us and finish off some songs and blah, blah. So I went and did that. And then they said, well, you should sing some of these songs. And then because Simon had produced Darryl's record, they got Darryl to come in and sing some songs as well. So that's how that it's sort of by osmosis, really.
Yeah. And of course, Motor City, I mean, that's would have to be one of your most classic songs.
Yeah, that's a great song. I love doing that.
You've had hits like Fall of Rome, House of Cards, but you also had Hammerhead, and you've just released Hammerhead Whiskey, I believe.
No, it's Hammered Head.
Hammered Head.
Yeah, because I thought, well, I like that.
That's close.
Yeah, well, Scott, the whiskey company that does it approached Scott Crawford, who manages me, about doing a whiskey, because they'd done it with Metallica and somebody else. I thought, that's fantastic. And so we got this an emblem together, and I think they were saying, we want to call, I don't know what they were thinking, Reckless Whiskey or something, I don't know. And I said, what about Hammered Head? And I'm thinking they're never going to go for this, and they went for it.
A great name for a whiskey.
Thank you very much.
Sort of gives you a bit of an indication of where it's going to go.
Well, and the funny thing is, because they sent us some samples, and I thought, this will just be crap. It'll just be, that crap they stick in those mixer cans. But it's really nice whiskey. It's more like Irish whiskey than Scotch whiskey. It's a little bit sweeter.
Cool. And now, speaking of Hammerhead, can we talk about misheard lyrics?
Yeah.
Because it's been a very big part of your life, right?
Well, to other people it has been, yeah.
Well, you know, and
there's some funny ones.
I always thought that you were singing with Hammerhead. You've been hanging with some Knocky Set Peep.
Knocky Set Peep?
Knocky Set Peep, I know. I know.
What does that even mean?
Could never, ever understand what it was.
Right.
But, of course, it's not.
No, hanging with the nicest people.
That's right. Did you do that intentionally? Like,
no, not at all.
Blur the words a little?
People are. No. And I think it started with the first Australian Crawl record. Now, I don't listen to that stuff because I can't listen to it. I think the band's all right, but I think the singer's horrible. I can't stand this. But what happened was I think, and I'm not blaming David at all, but I think, you know, he pushed me a bit to sell the song. So I was green. I didn't know what I was doing. It was the first time really in the studio, and it's barely controlled yelling, really, that singing. So I can understand why some of the stuff is a bit garbled, but, you know, that's almost a tradition in rock and roll music. But I think, I think some of the songs, I mean, the best one, Kate Fisher once told me when she was at school and Reckless came out, they thought it was She Don't Like Dead Canada Beaver. And I thought that's the best one I've heard. And you listen to it, it sounds a bit like Dead Canada Beaver.
It does, yeah, it does. Now, speaking of Reckless, I was chatting with Buzz Bidstrup.
Yeah, with Buzz.
And he said that Reckless was originally a reggae-styled song.
Probably. Buzz, I have to give credit where credit's due. Buzz played because we'd parted company with the drummer in Australian Crawl at that stage, and we couldn't really find a drummer. And we had a deal with Geffen Records in America, and they wanted to do the EP that came out here plus re-recorded versions of, you know, Boys Light Up, some of the hits that have been here of the Australian Crawl songs. This is Australian Crawl. And I had the song Reckless, and I'd done a demo with Bob Starkey. And Bob was the first person I know that, because the first person I knew that had a little setup at home. He had a little reel-to-reel. And I knew Bob a bit, and he said, come over and record some songs. We recorded some stuff, and he said, have you got any? And I played him Reckless. And I had the Reckless for a couple of years, and I didn't think it was any good. Because I thought, this is rubbish, doesn't mean anything. And I played to Bob, and he's the first person that said, oh, that's good, you should record that. And I went, really? Okay. So we recorded that. Now, I can't remember if it was reggae. Possibly it was. And then I remember when we were recording that record, and we couldn't find a drummer, and I'd met Buzz, because I'd been in that band, the Party Boys, for a week. And I knew Buzz, known Buzz from that. So I rang Buzz, and Buzz came in and played drums on that record. And Buzz was the first person we'd encountered that used a drum machine, because back in that, drum machines like this incredibly new thing. And Buzz programmed this drum machine track, and I think between him and Mark Opitz, who produced the record, they might have told me to make it like to turn the song into that. They might have. I can't remember.
Right.
But the thing that Buzz did come up with was that I was singing "She Don't Like," and I was blurring that kind of behaviour. And he said, "You know what you should do is really emphasise the that." So that was Buzz's idea. I'll give credit. He goes, "She don't like that kind of behaviour." That's Buzz's idea.
Yeah, nice. And that really defined changed the whole lyrics, didn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, well, it just changes the sort of the aspect of it and how it scans over the line, you know. And I think it's all these little things that possibly people don't realise that often go into just turning a song from some funny little thing I'm playing going, this is rubbish, this song.
Yeah,
It's something that works. I still don't get it, but anyway.
It does.
You know.
But it's one of those moments where, you know, you might have been thinking at the time, oh, this isn't going to be it's not going to be a hit, but it just really grabbed everyone and it went down in history.
Well, thank you. I think it's one of those songs, it's a perfect example of the sort of song that it took about as long to write as it takes to sing. It just fell out. And because it was so easy, it just came. I just went, and there it was. And I didn't think about it to the point where I actually thought, right, these lyrics, they don't hang that up, mean anything. I'll fix the lyrics up one day. And I never did, just out of laziness, I guess. So, you know, and they were the first words that came out. I didn't think about them. I didn't sit down and go, I've got to think of the second line. It just started singing that. And it does. If you look at it, it doesn't make any sense.
But you've really sort of honed your skills as a songwriter over the years. I mean, you've had plenty of practice at it. And your latest album, which is Toontown Lullaby, the 12th studio album, 8 years between drinks, I think it was.
Is there something like that? Probably, yeah. The last one was 13, I think, so I don't know when that came out, but yeah, it might be 8 years. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a song on there, Tallest Man I Know, which is a tribute to Aussie Crawl's Brad Robinson.
Tallest Man I Ever Knew, yep.
Yeah. And a couple of other songs, Trying to Write a Love Song. I mean, these are really very, very lyrical, almost poetic type of songs.
Well, thank you. I've been doing that for quite a while. I mean, I've tried, as I say, after Australian Crawls, when I first tried, I sort of started, twigged that, this songwriting thing. I mean, maybe there's something in this that I can actually do that I like. I like doing it, and I can really apply myself a bit more than I have been. And so, therefore, a lot of the songs, because a lot of Australian Crawl ones, if I was right, I mean, oftentimes you repeat the first verse, or you just go, I don't know, just put a couple of lines, just let's get this thing finished and record it. But that's when I started to take it more seriously, just especially lyrically, and tried to make them.
Yes.
And I hope that people find something in all the solo records, that there's something lyrically going on. I mean, some of them are crap, yes. But I mean, and as the further the older I've got, the more I've, applied myself to it, and just because I like the songwriters that I like are often more literary, the Randy Newmans and the Warren Zevons and people like that. So I just, I kind of, I've tried to move myself, into those. I like just push myself a bit further.
Following their footsteps.
Yeah.
So Sons of Beaches tour, and the album itself, Sons of Beaches, which was 40 years ago. 40 years ago last month. There you go.
Was it really?
It was. And, I mean, it really became an album name that was synonymous with Australian Crawl, really.
Well, it's from the song Daughters of the Northern Coast, the line is,
So what can we expect on the tour? Obviously, Aussie Crawl songs.
Oh, yeah,
some
you
of
get
yours
everything
as well.
Well, it's 75 to 90 minutes of songs everybody knows. I mean, that's the great thing about. I've been lucky enough to sort of come out when the world was the way it was in terms of the musical landscape of this country. So a lot of songs got played on the radio. So people come and it's 90 minutes of everybody walks away. I mean, we throw in the odd new one because I like to. But it's a great band. It's an 8-piece band, and it's just and we've all been playing together for ages. So it's a great band, and it's just 90 minutes of stuff, of Australian Crawl stuff, solo stuff. Just they're going to know everything.
Thank you so much for joining us on the show. Looking forward to seeing the vinyl version of Sons of Beaches come out.
Yeah, that'll be great. Thank you, Shane. Thanks very much.
Thanks for listening. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Long Way to the Top. Hit plus or follow to subscribe to the podcast, and head over to Facebook at the Long Way to the Top podcast and give us a like. Keep on rocking, and I'll catch you on the next episode of Long Way to the Top.